Welcome to the Talk Spot. This is Marcus, and today I am joined by our very own Hoops and Hip Hop. Hoops, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. So I was kind of thinking, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on today, so that way we can actually, show people that, we actually know each other. We're not just a channel that features all these different shows. So, yeah, man. Yeah, definitely thank you for coming on. And so we have a number of different topics I was thinking about we can cover today. So one being some of the characters or some of the Pokemon that we think should get into the new Smash Bros. Game. That was one thing. And then I also want to talk a little bit about the national decks and that kind of a little bit of a controversy. And then last thing, maybe if you want to cover a little bit of your history in YouTube and how you got started, things like that. So yeah, I guess we'll just start off with our ideas for which Pokemon should get into Smash. So who are some of the Pokemon that you're thinking of?
Well, when I thought about this, I kind of with Pokemon in particular, I feel like it's different to any other character you might go with in terms of possible Smash Bros. Characters, because there's obviously so many Pokemon to choose from. And so I feel like it's a little more strategic. You got to go with ones that fit, but also ones that people will know. And so the ones that I came up with were Zeraora from Sun and Moon, Marshadow also from Sun and Moon, Zoroark from Black and White Gen 5, Hawlucha from Gen 6, and I think I had Weavile as well from Gen 4.
Okay. Who did you say was your number 2?
Marshadow,
okay. So how do you think they would play out?
Well, I picked those ones in particular just because I feel like they're I guess I picked them all for different reasons, but I think they all really fit in the sense that they're more agile Pokemon that have a lot of potential for different move sets. For instance, with Marshadow, I think he would do really well because he's a smaller Pokemon, so he would contrast a little bit with the other ones that are currently in the game, but then he's also a ghost fighting type. So that typing in and of itself provides for a lot of different dynamic moves. And then obviously with him being a fighting type just is a natural fit for Smash Bros. But then for other characters like Zeraora, for instance, I picked him because I just feel like he's got a really nice body style to be a really good fighter in Smash Bros, but he's also one of the most kind of just overlooked Pokemon, I would say, because he did not even make his way into Sun and Moon, even though he's a Sun and Moon Pokemon, until 2 months before Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee came out, when everyone was already done with the games. They waited so long to put him into the games that no one even hardly got to experience using him at all. So I feel it would be cool to have him get a little more exposure. But then for the other ones, I feel like they're all kind of really similar in that they've got that I was saying, that nice agile type of body style, I guess you could say, that would make them capable fighters too.
So you said with Zeraora, he was a 7th generation Pokemon, but he didn't get released until, or when did he get released? Because I don't even remember, when you said his name, I looked him up real quick. I was I don't even remember being in the game.
Right. So he's a mythical Pokemon. So the way they have done mythicals for the past couple generations is that they release the base decks, and then they'll have 3 or 4 mythicals or something that don't get released right away, and they'll release them as event Pokemon later on, where you basically get a code, and then you put it into the game and you get it that way. But they're not immediately in the game, so you can't access them unless you have this code, and you can't get the code until Pokemon puts it out. And they did not put out a code for Zeraora until 2 months before Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee came out, which was at that point everyone was done with Sun and Moon and they didn't care. So he got completely just screwed over in terms of like getting his chance to shine. He was in like the one of the Pokemon movies, but like other than that, he was just like completely like ignored practically. Like he did not get a fair shot at all.
Did you were you ever able to get like your hands on that Pokemon, like Zoroark? Like were you ever able to like have him or get like, you know, own him?
I believe I got him, but like to be honest, I didn't ever use him because with the way they do event Pokemon, it's like so discouraging to like get a chance to like interact with the Pokemon and use them because they give it to you essentially like as a gift. And so like so many people, unless maybe like you're a competitive player or something, like you'll get the Pokemon for your Pokedex and then you essentially just put it in the box and like that's it. Like they really in recent years have taken a lot of the air out of the excitement of mythical Pokemon because they used to be like, oh, there was like this event that you had to do and there was like this like side quest you had to complete to like get a chance to catch the Pokemon, and now they just give it to you. And so it's like, yeah, it's cool, but like I'm not going to use a legendary Pokemon like in my main playthrough because like that's overpowered, and if I just like get given it, then I there just isn't like that motivation to want to use it because they just like hand it to you on a silver platter. So I've always kind of just like grabbed them, put them in like my Pokedex or whatever, and then like I never use them. So it's like it really sucks because it's a shame, but that's kind of just the way it's been for the past several years. So
some people listening, they might think like, oh well, some of these Pokemon are already in the game, like the one that you already listed. So like you know Mars Shadow and Zoroark, like they're both in the game, but like I mean what we're talking about is actually like playable characters. So if someone, you know, they're looking at it, they're like, oh well, Mars Shadow, you can already summon them. Like I mean for Smash, I mean one huge component of the whole game is like not playing with the items. So like actually before we had this conversation, you know, I mean I had to look at a list of the Pokemon that are even in the game because I don't think I've played with Pokeballs on since maybe the first week of when the game came out. Yeah, just to play with friends. I mean, every other, you know.
Right.
I mean, I guess for a lot of Smash players, I guess depending on, you know, how you play the game. But oftentimes, you know, I play no items and, you know, at least hazards off and, you know, try to make it as boring and bland as possible and no excitement with, you know. But I guess it depends on what kind of Smash player you are. But,
right.
Yeah, no, I mean... Yeah, like the whole thing with the whole mythical Pokemon, I mean, for someone like me that I've been a fan of Pokemon, but, you know, never like super into the metagame, and I can't name all, I don't even know how many Pokemon there are. Is it like nearly like 900 right now? Is that the number?
So technically, I mean, they've revealed 12 for Sun and Moon. So with all the other Pokemon we already like know about, the older ones, that brings us up to 821. So we'll probably hit like 900 or so by the time the rest of the Sword and Shield Pokemon come out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I out of that number you just said, I mean, I could probably at best maybe name like half of them. Just because, I mean, there's so many Pokemon now where I'm just like, wow, I don't know. I don't really like the design sometimes, so I really don't learn the names if I don't like the design. So
yeah,
man, yeah, the whole idea too, yeah, with mythical Pokemon. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I guess Nintendo and Pokemon, they must have some kind of strategy about how they release it and how it makes sense to them. But from a consumer standpoint, you know, I see that, you know, some of these mythical Pokemon. I'm like, oh, like. I didn't even knew what that guy did in the game. Like, who was for the 6th gen? Who was that? Like that volcano water Pokemon?
Volcanion.
Oh, was he the one that like he wasn't released at the time when the game came out, and then he only yeah.
And you know what? That's another case of just like him not really getting his I will say he had like a movie that was based around him, so I guess once again he got kind of that type of attention. But in terms of the games, he was like another one that just didn't get his chance to shine, which is a real shame because he's like the first and only water fire type, which is really cool because obviously water fire, they're like opposite types or whatever. And he's like based around like steam and stuff like that. So he's got a lot going for him. And he even had like a little bit of backstory in the games in terms of just like lore or whatever. But because like you never really get the chance to figure that out because they just hand him to you and they're like, here you go. And you don't really have to like, there's no gameplay involved to get him. You just kind of like get handed him and that's it. So it just, for someone like me who's really into Pokemon, like obviously like I know about them, but I don't get to use them, so it's a shame. For someone like you who might not be as familiar, like you don't even really get to like know them at all. So like there's all these like really cool Pokemon that for a lot of people just they don't even get introduced to properly because they're not really like technically even in the game the way they should be.
Yeah, that's definitely a very bad marketing decision on their behalf, I would say. But before we go too much on a rabbit hole, I was thinking about the 5 I was thinking about. So who I've got are, I think a lot of people probably heard of these ones for sure. So I have Gengar, Sceptile. You know, I wanted to be a little interesting here. I was thinking Mega Alakazam, not just Alakazam. And then Deoxys and Blaziken. Now, Deoxys, he is in the game, but all those other characters aren't. And, I was thinking, you know, like for Pokemon, I think for your average Smash fans that aren't necessarily the biggest fans of Pokemon, like they're familiar with Pokemon, but, you know, they don't know, they might not even know what generation we're at yet, like, they may, like, you know, number-wise. I was thinking about, you know, for these ones, like, I think a lot of even casual type Pokemon followers probably have heard of some of them. So, and I was thinking too, like maybe for some of, like how their moves would kind of go down. So I was thinking something like Gengar. I was thinking he would at least be kind of floaty like Kirby. And I mean, I feel like with Kirby, I mean, he's such a unique character in Smash that I think it'd be cool to kind of see a character that incorporates some of his abilities, but then, maybe also has like a projectile. Like I could totally imagine Gengar floating like Kirby, but then he also has, like the Shadow Ball technique that Mewtwo has. Like I think something like that could look really cool. Like so he has a projectile, and then maybe he does a thing where he can have like a Wario style chomp, where he kind of like chews on you a little bit.
Yeah.
I was thinking something like that. And then, maybe for Sceptile, Gengar was what I thought about the most in depth about kind of some of their moves. I think for Sceptile, probably something kind of similar to Greninja, but, kind of a fast, not very strong character. So a character that's kind of fast and very rapid and has a lot of combos, but doesn't have a lot of knockout power. I was thinking for Mega Alakazam, I was thinking, probably more just kind of like psychic and just kind of like moving like things and hitting you. I mean, I wouldn't want it to be a total copy of Mewtwo, but maybe something like that. Like one idea or one of the reasons why I would love to see Mega Alakazam is I just really like the way that he looks. Like his design style looks so good, and I feel like for a fighting game, I think that it would just look really unique. I think for Smash. And then, your Deoxys, I was thinking maybe something like fast and rapid, maybe with a little bit of kick, maybe like a Fox, and then a Blaziken, maybe like a strong kind of knockout character, maybe something like a Ganondorf or something like that. But,
right.
I mean, I feel like with Pokemon, I mean, again, a lot of people, depending on where you fall, like which side of the fence you fall for Smash, you probably have different thoughts about Pokemon and Fire Emblem. Like, I feel like those two franchises are probably the most like divisive, I guess I could say, entries in the game, because if you don't like Fire Emblem, then you look at the roster and you say, oh my gosh, like a third of the roster are guys with swords that are Fire Emblem. And, especially now too that that Smash announced the character from Dragon Quest, the hero character.
Right.
Like he looks like Fire Emblem to a lot of people, and he just kind of fits that whole mold, and you just look and you're like, oh my gosh, like whatever, there are 8 characters from Fire Emblem, whatever the number is. Then you have all these swords people, I think they're like, and then if you don't like Pokemon that much, you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, like, there's Pikachu, there's summons in the game. I think Pokemon is the second most represented franchise in Smash. I think only after Mario. But for a lot of people, I've talked to friends that play Smash, and they're like, oh, I have no idea who Greninja and Incineroar are. Like they have virtually no idea who those characters are.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that'd be the problem for them, is that I could see them wanting to add in like new characters, or especially characters or a Pokemon from Generation 8. But I also just feel like a lot of people would be like, I don't even know who that is. Like, who's that, like that, what's his name? Is it Meltran? Who's that new 8th generation Pokemon that has like a lug nut is his head?
Meltan?
Meltan, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is he supposed to be like a potential face of Generation 8?
You know, it's hard to say because he was released partly for Pokemon Go and partly for Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee after, like, obviously all the 7th gen Pokemon were released. So, like, that's kind of what everyone thought, is that he was going to be an 8th generation Pokemon. But Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are still considered 7th generation games. So as of right now, it's hard to even say, like, whether or not he is like 7th gen or 8th gen. Like, until we kind of like learn a little more about him, if they like talk about him or give details in Sword and Shield, he's kind of being considered a 7th gen Pokemon. But it's really like kind of weird at the same time, because we've never had a Pokemon that was just like given to us like right in the middle of 2 generations, where it's like it's not really 7th but it's not really 8th either. So he's kind of like up in the air at this point.
Because I mean, you can own him right now, right? Like, you can have him in your team or in your for
Let's Go you can. But he's not in Sun and Moon at all.
Does he, I mean, I actually don't really know anything about him. Like, is he like a good Pokemon? Like, is he a good competitive Pokemon at all?
I mean, so he's a mythical, so there's that. And then he also evolves. So he evolves into Melmetal, and from what I've heard, he's like, I guess, solid competitively. But the thing about him that really kind of makes him unique and stand out is that he was created for Pokemon Go specifically, as opposed to like the main series, and he's been integrated into the main series as opposed to the other way around. And they revealed him by like making everyone think that there was like this leak in Pokemon Go, that like they had messed up and they had let him out early, but apparently like that is what they were intending to do for like marketing purposes. And so there was this, like, I remember it was like last year during like this one specific weekend where everyone was just like losing their minds because there was this new Pokemon that was in Pokemon Go that no one knew about, because there wasn't like a name or anything at the time. There was just this random weird lugnut Pokemon that no one had any explanation for, and it was just like pandemonium until they came out and said, yeah, this is a thing we're doing. So as far as like competitively though, like, I think the verdict is still out, because like I said, the only game that he can be used in is Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and because Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee only have Gen 1 Pokemon, those games aren't being used as like the competitive games. It's still Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon until the new ones come out. So I think we'll kind of like get more of a feel for him once Sword and Shield come out. But from what I've heard, he's solid, I guess. He's like not terrible.
Do you feel like for Smash, I mean, would you, like, let's say, so I mean, there's only one more character that's going to be added to this DLC pack, right? Would you be totally shocked if, like, Nintendo or whatever, Super Smash Bros., would you be shocked if they added 1 or 2 more Pokemon to the, add them as DLC? Like, do you think that's a real possibility?
In this particular Smash Bros, I don't think we're going to get another Pokemon, because I just feel like we already have pretty good representation. Like, if they were to add another Pokemon, the one I personally believe they would add, which this was actually my true 5th pick. I had Weavile as my backup, but I totally forgot about this, that I picked this guy until just now. But the one I think that would for sure get in would be the final evolution to Grookey, the grass starter for Sword and Shield, because starter Pokemon are just kind of like easy picks because they're the most popular, obviously. And we got Greninja, who's a water starter for Gen 6. We got Incineroar in this most recent Smash, who's obviously a Gen 7 fire starter. So I feel like Gen 8 grass starter would make the most sense. So I feel like the next time we get a Pokemon character, whether it's this Smash or next Smash, that would be the most likely scenario in my opinion. But overall, in terms of like getting another Pokemon with the DLC, I just don't think it would happen because we already have plenty of Pokemon already. And the way they've been going with the DLC characters so far, they've been like seriously bringing the heat. And I think if they used one of those 5 slots on a Pokemon, I feel like it would be just disappointing by comparison. Because like I don't feel like you can follow up Banjo-Kazooie with a Pokemon. Like that just doesn't equate in terms of like Smash Bros. Like hype type stuff. So I feel like those other 2 slots that we're still waiting on are better served for other possibilities. Just in terms of making them like as hype as possible. But in terms of like future like Smash Bros, I will definitely get obviously more, because as long as Pokemon's around, they're going to be in Smash Bros.
Yeah, and I mean, Pokemon is like one of the 2 main pillars of Nintendo. You have Mario and you have Pokemon. I mean, everything else is nice, but I mean, those franchises are just gigantic. But yeah, I agree with you. I feel like after this pack is over, I feel like they'll probably I wouldn't be shocked if they do another third-party character. And then I think when they do other DLC packs, I just have a feeling that there'll be a number of other characters that'll probably come before more Pokemon. Like you said, I mean, I could see something far more likely being something like even like a Sora from Kingdom Hearts, or like a Sephiroth, something like that. Like I just feel like adding another Pokemon probably, I don't think will happen immediately, but yeah, I think it would be cool. I mean, we could talk about this at a later time, but I think it'd be cool if they do like a Dragon Ball Z Fighters type of game or Marvel vs. Capcom type game. But if they did that with Pokemon versus like some other franchise, like Pokemon versus like Mario, or just have it all be Pokemon, but in that style. Because I mean, I think Pokken is cool, but it's kind of that Tekken style of fighting. So I'm not the hugest fan of that type of fighting, but yeah, I mean, if you got like a game that looked like Marvel vs. Capcom, but it was actually all Pokemon or something, I think that could be great. But I wanted to kind of, I guess, change gears a little bit to go to another topic, and that being the whole national Pokedex, I guess, controversy or issue. So maybe if you wouldn't mind maybe explaining a little bit what that is, and kind of a little bit of what the issue is with it.
Yeah, so during E3, when they were showing off some gameplay for Pokemon Sword and Shield, they essentially made the announcement that they had essentially taken a selection of Pokemon that are going to appear in this game, and that you'll only be able to transfer other Pokemon from like older games, for instance, if they are in the regional Pokedex for Sword and Shield, which effectively means that if the Pokemon in question that you want to transfer over isn't native to the region in the game, you won't be able to transfer it over, which also means like consequently that there's no like what's called a national Pokedex, meaning like not every single Pokemon is going to be in the game. It's only the ones that they have like selected that are going to like appear in the region. So it's essentially going to be like their picks for the game as opposed to like every single Pokemon.
So too, have they announced a number of Pokemon they're going to cut out? Like, has that kind of been said so far? So like, let's just say, for example, that Generation 8, it takes us to 900 Pokemon. How many, like, have they said anything like, oh, we're going to cut out 300 of that, so there'll only be 600? Like, has there been any talk like that so far?
No, there hasn't, but all indications point to the fact that there is going to be still a really good amount, because I believe of the Pokemon we know for sure are going to be in the game, I don't know the exact number, but it's like it's well over 100 at this point, might be like 150, and that's just like what we've seen from trailers, and they've shown like all different kind of generations, so that is obviously a good sign. And then the main reason why they're doing it is just because there's just straight up too many Pokemon to reasonably be able to include them all in one game, especially when we're now on the Nintendo Switch, where all the Pokemon require HD models that also require animations. It's just getting too complex and huge to sustain. So with that being said, obviously we had like every Pokemon in the game. Like this wasn't really as much of a problem in Gen 6 or Gen 7 when we had a couple hundred less Pokemon. So I feel like I can't say the number for sure that they will pick, but I think it's going to be a pretty good amount. The thing that I've been banking on is that they'll probably have like half to like a little over half. So I've been kind of like assuming that they'll take half of the older Pokemon pre-Generation 8, which would be like basically would be like 400 out of the 800, and then we'll get like 100 or so new Gen 8 Pokemon, and that'll give us like 500 out of 900, which would be a little over half. I think that's pretty reasonable to expect. But yeah, they haven't like given us an actual for sure number yet.
So just too, from what you've heard too, I mean, are the theories, or at least the ideas out there so far, are they that like entire families will be wiped out, or is it going to be more like, you know, instead of having, oh my gosh, like the first form version of Clefairy, will it be like we're going to cut out that, but then we're going to keep Clefairy and Clefable, or, you know, we're not going to have the pre-evolved form of Jinx? Like, do you think it'll be more like that, or do you think they're just going to wipe out the whole family?
Right. So it definitely has to be an all for nothing type of situation where you either have the entire family or you don't, because with the way obviously like breeding and stuff works like that, like it just wouldn't make any sense to have like Clefairy in the game, for instance, and then breed it and have it like pop out another Clefairy when we know that like Cleffa exists, for instance. So it's definitely like an all or nothing situation where you got to have the whole family or you got to have none of the family, because it just like wouldn't make sense otherwise. And that would be like even worse of a situation than it already is.
Do you think, I mean, what do you think is going to be their method of deciding who's in and who's not in? I mean, is it just going to be purely based on popularity, or do you think it'll be a little bit deeper analysis than that?
Based on the variety of Pokemon we've seen, I think there is definitely going to be more of an analysis. They've said themselves that it, like, in addition to the whole just like needing to kind of hunker down in terms of just like preventing it from getting like too big, in a sense that like it's just too much for them to handle. They also said that they are trying to balance the game competitively in terms of like what Pokemon are in and just like making it all work from a competitive sense. So there's just like a good pool of Pokemon to choose from for that competitive scene. So I don't really know how they're going to go about like deciding like how to create that balance, especially if it is from a competitive perspective. But I definitely suspect that popularity will play a certain role in it as well. And then also the other thing that they're considering is kind of just like whether or not the Pokemon fits into the new Galar region, because the new region is based on the UK, and obviously it's going to have its own like unique geographic locations. It's going to have like culture that's involved, and so you kind of have to choose Pokemon that make sense for that. Like you probably wouldn't expect like a ton of like tropical Pokemon like from Alola, for instance, because they kind of had their own vibe and their own theme, and that's kind of what's going to go on here. So it just kind of, there's several different factors, but it's definitely like not a cut and dry type situation, I would expect. Like they're definitely not just going to pick the most popular Pokemon and slap them in there. It's definitely a little more to that.
What do you think is more controversial, this whole National Dex thing or the whole Dynamax thing? Like, because isn't Dynamax replacing Mega Evolutions?
Yeah, so I was a little bit surprised, because like when I heard that they said, they also mentioned that during the E3 like gameplay presentation that it was replacing it, and I kind of just took that to mean, oh well, I mean like that just essentially means that it's going to be like the new featured mechanic, just like Mega Evolution was and Z moves were. But then they clarified that and said that Z moves and Mega Evolution are not going to appear in the game. So taking all of that into consideration, I would say it's a little disappointing, more specifically for Mega Evolution as opposed to Z moves for me, because I don't really care about Z moves like moving on and like being featured in like other games outside of Sun and Moon. But Mega Evolutions are obviously like super cool, and people have wanted them to like continue forward, and they've wanted more megas to be added for a while. So it's frustrating in that sense that they're kind of going with a new feature as opposed to like expanding this older one that people love, especially when like with the Dynamax feature in particular, it definitely doesn't measure up to something like Mega Evolution, because the whole idea is that the Pokemon just get bigger, they get more powerful, it lasts for a couple turns, so it's not like as exciting, I would say. But at the same time, my whole thought process has been like, it's definitely not going to ruin my experience of the game at all, because I'm not playing Sword and Shield to Mega Evolve my Pokemon. Like, I played X and Y to Mega Evolve my Pokemon 6 years ago. Like, that's something I've already done. So personally, I'm looking forward to the new stuff, which includes Dynamax. And even if Dynamax isn't as cool in my opinion as Mega Evolution, it's at least something that I haven't experienced before, whereas with Mega Evolution I've done that whole thing, and so it really doesn't bother me too much that it's not in the game.
Yeah, because I mean, I agree with you. The Mega Evolutions, I mean, when that was announced, whatever it was, 6 years ago or 6.5 years ago for the Mega Evolutions, that was like a big thing where people were like, oh my gosh, like we've gotten the fourth forms, and you know, they looked cool and all that stuff. And yeah, my initial reactions when I heard that and I saw Dynamax, I was thinking like, wow, like this actually kind of sounds a little lame. I thought, like, seeing a big gigantic Pokemon, like I was like, yeah, it sounds like a really, like, just sounds like a novelty to me. But I think you're right. You know, at the end of the day, it probably won't actually impact the game itself. But I mean, I do feel like I'm gonna miss Mega Evolutions. Like, I wish that they had continued it and that they had made more new Pokemon have Mega Evolution forms. But
right,
yeah, I mean, but yeah, like you said, at the end of the day, I mean, it'll probably still be a good game regardless, or it could be even a great game. And you know, it'd just be one of those things where you're like, wow, that was weird that they got rid of that, but you know, it's still a good game anyways. I mean, it's weird, like Nintendo, it seems like they do a lot of random stuff like that, you know, like for Mario Kart, you know, in Double Dash they introduce a second driver to then cut him out the next game, or you know, like they kind of bring stuff in and take things out, and it seems very arbitrary why they're doing things like that. Like even the Z moves, I kind of thought that was weird that they added it and then they're taking it out now, and it's like, oh, okay, well,
they've actually commented on that in the past, and they've said they do that so that further on down the road, as we kind of like move on to newer games, that those older games like X and Y with Mega Evolution, for instance, they kind of make those features exclusive to those games so that those older games have some value later on down the road, which like, so you have a reason to go back and play them as opposed to just playing the newest thing, which in my opinion, I think that's like a noble reason, obviously wanting to give your games like value kind of like for years to come, as opposed to just like forgetting about them as soon as the next game is released. I think that's personally really cool, but I think it's gotten to like a tipping point where they're kind of just like, they've got these amazing features that they've created, like Mega Evolution, that everyone wants to see like expanded upon, and they want to see it brought back, and they're just kind of being really stubborn about it and just sticking to their guns and like their philosophies and just not doing it, which like I just don't think, I think it's to the point where that's going to start to work against them, and we're kind of obviously sort of seeing that in a way with this whole controversy, where like they have good reasons for what they're doing, like they're not like making straight up like boneheaded decisions, there's some thought process behind it, but they've also, I think they're kind of like in their own corner too much, and they're not listening to the huge like demand for something like Mega Evolution once again, that fans just want to see it in the game. And I think at the end of the day, like all your kind of like philosophies and like thought processes aside, like you kind of need to like listen to fan opinion to a certain degree, because those are the people that are buying your game. So it, like, I understand like maybe it's like a fine balance between the two, but I feel like they definitely should start kind of putting a little more weight into those kinds of things moving forward, because it is definitely getting to the point where it's just starting to become frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, even like you said, like the Alola forms, I mean, like, yeah, that was kind of a big thing for the marketing in the Gen 7. It was like, oh my gosh, they get like Raichu and, Marowak and all this stuff.
Right.
And then they did it for what, 12 Pokemon or however many Pokemon they did it for? And then the next generation, they're like, well, I hope you guys didn't like that too much. Cause that's MIA now.
Yeah, they have an amazing way of making these like amazing things that they just only last the one time. I am confident, though, that we will get something similar to Megas and Alola forms in Sword and Shield, where we essentially get old forms for new Pokemon, because that seems kind of to be sort of a trend that they've been doing in the past couple generations, and I think that will continue to some degree. There have been rumors. I haven't like looked into it too much because I don't want the game to be spoiled for myself personally, but there have been like leaks that are looking to be like pretty legit that have said that there's going to be some other type of Dynamax like variant that gives Pokemon new forms, and there's also going to be evolutions to like just regular evolutions, but to like older Pokemon, kind of how they did with like in Generation 4 where they gave a bunch of older Pokemon evolutions. So if that happens, I'll be pretty hyped, because having like, yeah, when older Pokemon got new evolutions, that was always kind of like one of my favorite features from like earlier Pokemon games, because it was cool to see Pokemon get like new forms and new evolutions. So if they do that, I'll definitely be hyped, regardless of like Mega Evolution getting cut or Alola forms getting cut or whatever.
So you can see them adding in like Farfetch, like he could have an evolution form that people still won't play as, but at least it's cool that he's there.
Right, yeah. And like, it's funny that you mentioned Farfetch, because Farfetch is one Pokemon that everyone has wanted an evolution for, because it's just this like random duck Pokemon that like has done nothing for 25 years or however long it's been. And it's like, even like a couple of years ago, or last year I should say, it got even worse, because we actually we got a bunch of like information about the beta for Gold and Silver, and we actually learned that they were going to make an evolution for Farfetch, but it was like one of the Pokemon that got cut from the final game. And so like everyone just like was up in arms over Farfetch just getting the short end of the stick. So just like, yeah, I mean, like just seeing Pokemon like that either aren't as strong as they could be, or like deserve like more attention. Like another one is like Dunsparce from Gen 2. Like everyone is like, that Pokemon looks like it could evolve into something really cool, but it's just literally done nothing forever. So like everyone always kind of wants to see new forms for Pokemon like that. So
no, you're definitely right. I know we've already gone a little bit long, but I was going to ask you just a little bit about if you wouldn't mind maybe talking a couple minutes about your career on YouTube. And I guess one thing that I was wondering, just for yourself, like, so for your videos when you first started, like, would you say like it was a slow and steady kind of a thing where you did a video and then it get some traction, the next video was the same for a little while like that? Or do you feel like your channel just exploded because you had a couple videos that just did really well? Like, kind of, I guess, which of those two things would you say would happen, and which one is more replicatable for a person? Let's say, they're starting off on YouTube and they only have, 80 subscribers or something like that, and, they want to grow their channel.
Right. So I think from my experience personally, I am definitely of the ilk that I kind of had to straight up force my way into like all this success I've had. Like, I've definitely seen other people where it kind of just like, not to discount any like skill or work they've put in, but there's definitely some people I've noticed where it just kind of like falls into their lap, and like they capture lightning in a bottle and they just roll with it, which is awesome for them. But for me, like, all the success I've gotten has been through like blood, sweat, and tears, and just like grinding it out, because I have definitely, like, I've been doing YouTube for almost 7 years now, and for the first few years it was a slow process. Like, after the first year, like, first off, I had no idea what I was doing when I started. I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants, and I like slowly learned as I went on. But like for the first year, I remember at like the 1 year mark of my channel, I had 25 subscribers. And then by like the second year I had like 100, and then like the third year I had like a little over 300. And it wasn't till like after that 3-year mark when I actually had gotten myself kind of like integrated into the community a little bit, and I had gotten a shout out from a bigger YouTuber, and that's kind of like what pushed me over the 1,000 subscriber mark, and that took me over like 3 years to do. So like there's definitely like a lot to be said about just kind of like working hard, like kind of making yourself better, like just constantly doing whatever you can to make like your videos, your channel, your kind of like presence overall just like as good as possible. But then like you definitely want to like network and like make friends, talk to people, do that sort of thing, because for as much work as I've put in, I've also had a lot of benefit from like collaborating with other people and getting my name out there that way by kind of like appearing on other people's channels, working on videos with other people, that sort of thing. So it's kind of a combination of just like working hard, but then also being strategic about it, because with as many kind of like channels and videos as there are on YouTube, it kind of becomes sort of like a game that you got to figure out. And if you can figure it out and like use the whole, I guess like the culture, the community of it to your advantage, you can definitely grow a lot. But then there's also, like I said, something to be said about just plain old hard work, because I personally don't believe I would have gotten those opportunities of like getting those shout outs and working with those people that obviously gave me that extra bit of growth. I don't think I would have gotten that opportunity if I didn't put in the work beforehand. So I think, like, as philosophical as it might sound, I think it really just all comes down to putting in the work and working hard, because I have found in my own personal experience that the universe has a funny way of like rewarding you for that hard work if you put enough in. And that's not something I can really like quantify in like a physical form. Like, once again, it's like a philosophical type of thing. But in my experience, like every time I've kind of had a bit of a down slump, and I've just kind of like kept going and kept doing my thing, like it always pays off in the end. So you just have to work hard at it and kind of like put your time into it, and it'll pay off eventually, like one way or the other.
And I mean, let me look at your channel now. I mean, you're almost at like 100,000 subscribers, right? You're at 96,000 or 97,000.
Yeah. So I'm like a little over 96,000, and it's really surreal because the day I started my channel, that was like literally a goal, because I was just fascinated by the idea that A, you could kind of like make YouTube a career, and B, I thought it was like, I don't know why this fascinated me so much, but I thought it was incredible that like YouTube would send you this like plaque with your name on it, like, and like publicly recognize you in a way if you got to that milestone. That was just something that like I had to have, like I needed it, and that's kind of what has like drove me this whole time. And so to like nearly be there at this point is just like it's insane. So I'm definitely like thankful to have gotten this far.
Oh man, well that's incredible, dude. And I mean, we've enjoyed working with you so far. So I mean, you know, so far on the channel, you know, you've been working with us for like about a month or so, and dude, we're liking your content. I mean, I like it a lot, and I mean, you've been doing good work, and yeah, it's incredible, dude. I mean, I know some people in my own personal life where I'm sure you've met them too, where, you know, they have, you know, like a very small number of subscribers or views. And, you know, I can see how that could be very disparaging, you know, especially if that's something where somebody wants to make their career off of it or really wants to give it a real go. And then, you know, they publish a video and it gets 10 views. Yeah, that could be very demoralizing. So, it's good to hear that, you know, you basically persevered, and, you know, now millions of people have watched your videos, and I'm sure, you know, your listen time is, you know, hundreds of millions of hours or 1 billion hours or something like that put together. I mean, you've had people listen to your content so much, and yeah, that's an incredible accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to say one thing, that's the thing I would say is just like keep going. Like I even now, even though like I have a well-established channel and I've kind of like quote unquote made it, so to speak, I still have moments where it's like I have a video that doesn't do well, or I get into like a slow period where the channel traffic slows down a little bit. Like, discouraging things still happen, and I feel like on YouTube specifically, if you don't have that like can-do attitude, if you don't have that like thick skin to just persevere and keep going, you'll never make it. But if you do, and if you approach the next video the same way you did the last, even if that last video did really bad and you like were really like disappointed by the way it ended up, if you do the next video with just like as much passion and just kind of keep going and don't let like the results get you down, it always will pay off. Like I very much have like kept the mindset that if you work hard and like work towards a goal that you have, whether it's YouTube or anything else, that it's going to come true and like you're going to make it happen for yourself. The variable is like how fast it happens. So it'll either like happen for you super quick, or it might not happen for you for years. But the only thing that's going to prevent it from happening, even if it takes its time and is like really slow going, is if you stop. Like if you keep going, even if it takes you like 10, 20 years, you will get there just as long as you don't stop. So you just have to have like the perseverance, the patience, and like it will pay off for you if you like have that mindset.
Oh man, I agree with that, Hoops. Well, definitely, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, obviously, I mean, we like the content that you make, and I mean, you make some very good stuff, and we enjoy, talking to you and hanging out with you and stuff. So how can we follow, your main channel and things that you're posting online? Like, are you active on Twitter? And maybe if you wouldn't mind, maybe doing a little bit of a shout out for your content and how people can follow you.
Yeah, for sure. So on YouTube, I'm just Hoops and Hip Hop. It's all one word. I also have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can follow me. I'm pretty active on there. I respond to people. So like if you want to say hi or whatever, definitely you can do that. And then I'm also on like iTunes and Spotify and like music platforms because I do music from time to time. I've done a lot of Pokemon remixes and other like Nintendo related music remixes as well. So you can find me on those places. So I'm kind of a little bit of everywhere, to be honest.
Perfect. And then also too, I mean, every Friday your show is on this channel too, the UCast Studios channel. So
right.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good Hoops and Hip Hop content out there. But definitely, yeah, I want to thank you again for coming on so much, and we look forward to your future content, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.